Jaya Radha Gopinath Radha Gopinath Radhe. Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Shri Radhe. O Jaya Vrishabhanu Nandini Radhe Radhe Vrishabhanu Nandini Radhe Radhe. O Radhe 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 Radhe. Om Agnati Mirandasya Gyananjala Shalakaya Chakshu Amritam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Taralaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tarabhaktaya Namo Namaha. Bhaktya vihina aparada lakshay Chittascha karmadi tarangamadye Kripa maitvam sharanam prapana Vrinde namaste charanaravindam Bhajami radham aravinda netram Smarami radham madhurashmitasyam Vadami radham karuna baradram Tato mamanasti gatyena chapi. I first of all offer millions and millions of Dandavan pranams unto the lotus feet of my most beloved Gurudev, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Asto Tarazara Shishimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And the same again millions of times unto the lotus feet of our beloved Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Asto Tarazara Shishimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, and all the Vaishnava and Vaishnavi devotees of the Lord. Dandavat pranams. So, from this morning, discussing the entire cosmic creation and all the ingredients as manifesting from Krishna, one can definitely develop some type of awe and reverence when we hear those remarkable descriptions of how Krishna, through his potencies, manifests all the worlds. And yet at the same time, we're able to remember his utter sweetness with his reciprocal loving relationships with the gopis. This is the fullness of Krishna consciousness, that we hear both levels, both aspects, because all of it is true, all of it is the absolute. And the devotee, he has to know the priority, he has to know how to see that this devotion to Brajendranandan in Sri Vrindavan is the highest place of my meditation when I'm doing my bhajan, that relationship, and simultaneously appreciate when I'm walking around in this world and having so many dealings that every single thing in existence is connected in some way to Krishna. It's like, for example, everything in this material world, all the objects, our bodies included, are all manifesting from Baladev Prabhu. So we can be remembering Baladev Prabhu concept. As soon as we remember Baladev, we remember Gurudev. As soon as we remember Gurudev, we remember the sweetness of Sri Radha, because this is what he spoke so extensively. So like this, the devotee can be very balanced. I know as I travel around, many times the devotees confess to me their difficulty in being balanced in their practices and how to work and live in the external world, in the material world at the same time. How to, reconcile those two ways of life is not always easy. But if one has his principle and priority focus on Krishna, then by Krishna's mercy, everything becomes very simple to actually reconcile. There's no differences. It's just as we get older, or as we get more understanding of the philosophy, that we naturally, our material desires diminish. So naturally, we don't want to, or need to even, spend so much time working with the material energy. Less and less. The more we chant, the more our material desires go down, therefore the more our material ambitions are, there, so we don't need to work so hard. That's the mystical aspect of Krishna consciousness. But as long as we have these material ambitions, then we must fulfill those desires simultaneously, but keeping always this as the principle, the key ingredient of how to keep these remembrances flowing in my mind. So by reading these pages, it gives us some impression. So particularly this Venu Gita, one of the 5 Gits in the 10th Canto, it is the Prayojan Tattva, it is the goal. Without knowing clearly what is the goal, how can we possibly proceed towards it? It's like the mind is like a very strong arrow, and the body is like a strong bow. So you have this good body and you have this good mind, you have this arrow, but where are you going to shoot it? Where are you going to aim the energy of this body and mind in this brief life? So if we aim it on trying to hear as much as possible of the sweetness of Sri Radha and Krishna's pastimes, simultaneously as having that on the foundation of the tattva vichar that we heard this morning, then it becomes a very much balanced bhajan program. If it's devoid of the Atma Tattva, it certainly can become a little bit, it's like your feet aren't quite on the ground. And it can become confusing. We need to know the whole picture. Because you just hear the beautiful pastimes, but then you have to come out, you have to eat, you have to sleep, you have to interact, you have to go to the shops, do so many things. How to reconcile all those activities with what we're reading about the spiritual reality. So the Atma Tattva, we apply this with our intelligence. Our intelligence becomes pacified and strengthened by the amazing truths or siddhantas that are in the Bhagavatam to give us guidance on our daily journey. It talks about the Varnashram system, it talks about justice, so much law, the Manus, so many things like this. Everything is related, science and so on. All the arts, everything in existence is explained in the Bhagavatam to give us a complete whole picture of how to conduct our lives. But as we progress further, then less and less, in fact, we need to interact in that same way with the material energy. And more we can immerse ourselves just in these meditations. So I'll read, just as I was reading yesterday, through here. And if you have any questions or comments, that we can have discussion at the same time, because it's not always easy just to hear someone reading. So don't hesitate to interrupt me. Okay?
There's one book left for anybody who wants.
Anybody want to have a copy? Okay, I'm going to read this verse 10. It's on page 67. Vrindavanam Sakhi Bhuvo Vitanoti Kirtim Yadevaki Sutapadam Bhujalabda Lakshmi Govinda Venum Anamanta Mata Mayur Nirtyam Prekshyadri Son of Ratnai Tanaya Samasta Sattvam. Okay. Stumbled through it a little bit, but that's the melody. It's not my first language, Sanskrit, so not really flush on that one. Translation. The fame of the earth, O Saki, is enhanced due to being splendidly decorated with the marks of the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, the son of Yashoda. Upon hearing the Venu Nad, the peacocks take it as the thunder of the clouds, and becoming intoxicated begin to dance. Also feeling pleasure, the other animals in the meadows of Govardhan become stunned. Because of this, the presence of Sri Vrindavan makes the earth planet even more glorious than Vaikuntha. So the gopis are sitting in their bowers, in their homes together, and their minds are utterly immersed in Krishna, and the sweet flute sound from the pasturing grounds is attracting them. They can hear that. And in their meditation, which is getting deeper and deeper, they're becoming more and more immersed and expressing the beauty of their feelings of attraction and affection for Krishna. So reading from the Ananda Vardina Vyakya by Srila Gurudev, describing the conversations of the gopis who are being thoroughly drenched in the shower of nectar coming from Sri Krishna's lotus lips in the form of his ethereal flute song, Sri Shukadev Goswami said, "The intoxicated gopis have been telling their friends, 'O Saki, birth as a Venu is so much better than that of a woman. If after death we can take birth as a Venu, then we will be able to relish the joy of always being with Krishna.'" One time in Charan Bahari, on the way to Kamyavan, Srila Gurudev sat with a few of us and he was describing the sound of Krishna's flute. And he described it as going like waves, up and down like this. That was as much as he described. It wasn't very long. But it was nice to get that impression, because we hear many different material flute playing. How can we imagine this extraordinary flute, what it does? All the moving creatures become like non-moving, and all the non-moving entities, like the rivers, become totally stunned. The rivers, like Jamuna, when she hears the flute, she simply wants to burst her banks and flood towards Krishna's lotus feet with her arms of her waves and embrace them. But she can't, because she's completely stunned. She practically becomes solidified, and then the rocks, they become like melted, so that we see today so many of these footprints when we go to the different Charan Paharis, and we see directly all these different footprints. So what sort of sound is that? I'm sure many of us must have contemplated actually what is the nature of that sound that is stunning even the demigods. The demigods and the demigodesses, it's described how the demigodesses, their clothing loosens in attraction to Krishna, and they're feeling, oh, what will my husband think who's beside me? But the husband has also imagined himself to be in the form of a woman and attracted to this Sri Krishna as well, and his clothes also began to loose. So both are feeling quite bashful in front of each other, but at the same time they're both being attracted, so significantly by the sound of this flute. So what is the nature of that flute? If we constantly meditate on that, I'm sure Krishna will give us some insight gradually by his mercy. But don't tell anybody if you hear that, otherwise they'll think you're crazy. Now in this verse, the gopis cease talking about the fortune of the flute in Krishna's hand, and instead speak about the favorable position of the earth, which is being graced with the touch of Krishna's lotus feet. The natural action of praying is to make the heart restless. It doesn't make us peaceful. It's amazing how it's described in this world, it's a reflection of the spiritual world. And in the spiritual world, Madhurya Ras is on the top and Shanta Ras is at the bottom. But in this world, it's like Shanta Ras is what is most aspired for. People are looking for peaceful existence. They're looking for this Shanti, this peaceful nature. Many times the devotees are criticized, oh, you don't seem a very peaceful bunch sometimes, because we're actually charged with enthusiasm to render service. The gopis weren't particularly peaceful. That wasn't in their, you don't get that feeling from reading about the gopis. You know, they're in complete anxiety about when will they meet Krishna. How can they get to Krishna? This nature of prem is not, you know, covered by some influence of this shantaras, this peaceful type of mood. It's the opposite in this world, though. Intoxicated in the heights of love and anxious to embrace Krishna, the sweet gopis say, had we been given birth as this forest ground, rather than milkmaids, we would have received the touch of Krishna's lotus feet and considered our lives worthwhile. They're just completely absorbed in wanting to be close to Krishna. We observe in the previous verse that the sight of any object of Vrindavan stimulates the gopis' thoughts of Krishna and kindles their love for him. Having reached the peak of pure prem, the gopis see themselves as very fallen and wretched. They regard Krishna's flute and the flute's relatives, the ponds, rivers, trees and flowers, and even the deer and other animals, to be the most fortunate beings. All the residents of the forests, they ponder, can see Krishna and even touch him without anyone interfering. Only we gopis have to face all difficulties in approaching him. With eyes full of love, they look over the entire Brajamandal and see that it is covered with the marks of Krishna's lotus feet. It's described actually in another place in the Bhagavatam, I think it's in Gurudev's commentary. No, in Gopi Gita, that in that last verse of Gopi Gita, what's that? Yatte charanam uraham staneshu. That last verse, 19th verse, how the gopis are in their meditation disturbed that Krishna's lotus feet might be pricked by the different sharp pebbles and the grains on the path. But then it's described in the commentary that actually Bhumi Devi herself, she extends her tongue. So Krishna walks on such a soft footing, in fact, so he doesn't feel any of that. There's also so many descriptions of Krishna's footprints, particularly I remember when the Kalyanaga serpent is strangling Krishna, and the demigods, they exhibit all kinds of inauspicious omens to the residents of Braj to come quickly to help Krishna, because they actually think that Krishna might be helpless, the demigods. And at that time they follow the trail of millions of cows, but they can see by their prem the footprints of Krishna amongst all those cows' footprints, which is very remarkable when you've got millions of footprints of cows, but you can still just see Krishna's footprints sparkling separately from all those other footprints that could have obscured Krishna's footprints. So how splendid are his footprints. When Krishna plays in the forest and climbs the trees with his friends, automatically the trees receive the touch of those very lotus feet, which are worshipped and prayed to even by Brahma, Shiva, great sages, and all other living beings. The gopis are eager that Sri Shyamasundara's really attained lotus feet, which are the abode of Lakshmi, should also adorn their breasts. For the forest of Vrinda, however, those lotus feet are easily attainable as they climb the trees, perform pastimes in the secluded forest bowers, kunjas, and enter the lakes. The feet climb the trees and perform pastimes. In this way, the gopis sing the glories of Vrindavan. Vrindavana bhuvo vinati kiritim. The gopis exclaim, O Saki, this land of Vrindavan is even more sanctified and glorious than Vaikuntha. If the word vitanoti, V, indicates Vrindavan's unique speciality, Vaishishtya, meaning that Vrindavan's qualities are more special than Vaikuntha's, and Tanoti means spreading, the land of Vrindavan spreads the fame and prestige, kirti, of the earth, being the playground of Swayam Bhagavan Rajendranandan, who is all-powerful, the cause of all causes, and the endless ocean of ambrosial mellows. And having been touched by his lotus feet, Vrindavan is infinitely superior to Swaga, the heavenly realm, and Vaikuntha. Devaki Sutta Padam Bhuja Labda Lakshmi. The glory of the land of Vrindavan is that it is always covered with Sri Krishna's lotus footprints. Vrindavan's beauty is thus enhanced by the various symbols of his lotus feet, the flag, thunderbolt, elephant goad, etc. Srila Sanatana Goswami Pad writes the meaning of the word Vrindavan. One who nourishes and protects everyone is called Vrindavan. We were just saying this morning what a phenomenon it was. If you live in Vrindavan, you never have to worry for your material maintenance. It's a fact. It's an absolute fact. If you live here, all sorts of thoughts of attending to or being anxious about your material necessities, it's just not there. Actually, after a while, you start to worry about what are you desiring, because it seems like every time you desire, it seems to manifest, and that's not why we came to Vrindavan. We didn't come for that. But it has that ability to nourish and protect just by its potency. So Sanatana Goswami is saying like this, the meaning of Vrindavan, one who nourishes and protects everyone is called Vrindavan. So we come to Vrindavan for shelter. Hiding the mood of opulence, Vrindavan maintains all by prem alone. Being controlled by this prem, the supreme power, Swayam Bhagavan himself, never leaves Vrindavan even for a moment. Srila Rupa Goswami describes this in his Laghu Bhavanamrita, Until Lila 167. Vrindavanam parityaja sakvachin naiva gacchati. Sri Vrindavan is the crown jewel of the earth planet. Why do the gopis say that it is even higher than Swaga or Vaikuntha? The answer to this question lies in understanding that in Swaga and other realms, Bhagavan resides in his Vishnu expansions, as Upendra in Swarga and as Vishnu in Vaikuntha. In this way, the same Bhagavan Vishnu resides in different places in one form, and in another Krishna, the original Vishnu has... What was it?
Or another form. Krishna.
One form or another, Krishna, the original Vishnu, has one form, but still he is present everywhere in unlimited expressions according to the particular pastimes. We're very fortunate because today we discuss this very point. In those objections that Jiva Goswami gives to Krishna being the essential oneness, one of the objections were that there are so many expansions of Krishna, and then he purifies this objection himself by quoting this very verse that's about to be quoted. That actually, and also there's another verse, Angani yasya sakalendriya vrittimanti. This also in Brahma Samhita is clearing the same doubt that Krishna is like the different stages of the moon. There are 16 stages to the moon, and it's all actually the full moon, but we're only appreciating a part of it, so we give it a different name. And like with Krishna and all these different avatars, it's all Vrajendranandan in different aspects, his swamsa. So it's the same point that we were... So now, this is a beautiful example, now because of our study of the first aspect of the Bhagavatam, we can appreciate much more deeply this part. If we haven't read or studied that, we don't quite appreciate with the same significance what Gurudev is saying. So this is good to be reassured that our study of Tattva Siddhanta has great value in appreciating the Rasa Tattva. Among all these forms, however, only Krishna is the original, complete manifestation, and all others are partial incarnations or portions. So this is exactly what we discussed in this Chaturshloki. This has been described in Brahma Samhita 39. Brahmaradi Murti Shukala niyamani tishtan, nanavatam akarod uvaneshu kintu, Krishna swayam samabhavats paramam pumamyo govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. I worship the original person, Sri Govinda, who continuously descends to different planets and who, according to his prescribed schedule, manifests his powers in many different forms, establishing himself as Sri Ram and other incarnations, avatars. However, at the end of Dwapara Yuga, in the 28th millennium of the 7th Manu, in each day of Lord Brahma, Swayam Bhagavan, Sri Krishna himself, in his complete form, appears on this earth with his full paraphernalia of his eternal Brajadam. This is very wonderful to be reminded of this speciality of this time. We are now in the 28th Kali Yuga of the 7th Manvantara. We are just 5,000 years away from this original personality when he descended. So our fortune is inestimable, in fact. And hearing these pastimes is the gift of Mahaprabhu. We could hear these pastimes to a degree because they were heard without Mahaprabhu's presence for something like 4,500 years. These pastimes were there in the Bhagavatam. But to what degree did those scholars and saints understand these pastimes? How could they appreciate them? Practically, they were just too bewildering, and they wouldn't be, studied particularly as much because no one could really explain them. So few could explain them. But Mahaprabhu reconciled everything, so we can sit here together, just a general group, and read through here with a clear commentary and get a very profound appreciation of this conversation between the gopis, glorifying Krishna's flute. Sri Krishna Chandra, the Supreme Being, the Supreme Truth, establishes his bare lotus feet in the land of Vrindavan on the pretext of cowherding. Those lotus feet, decorated with red kumkum from the breasts of the Brajadevis, touch the land of Vrindavan, thereby making her blessed. Offering prayers to the particles of dust of Vrindavan, the respected Uddhava says, Asam aho charanarenu justam aham syam, Vrindavanam kimapi gudma lato sadinam. Bhagavatam 10:47-61. It would be the greatest fortune for me to become a tree, creeper, or medicinal herb in this Vrindavan Dham. Oh, if I become something like this, then I will always be able to serve the dust of the gopis' lotus feet. Bathing in this dust, I will be blessed. So we know the pastime of Uddhava. He was like a Jnani Bhakta. He was a disciple of Brihaspati. He was so erudite in his scholarship and understanding all of the scriptural truths. But when he came to Vrindavan, he was totally dwarfed when he began to appreciate the extent of the gopis' prem for Krishna. He had associated with Krishna for so much of his life. As a child, it's described, Uddhava would play with beautiful deity forms of Krishna. He would wear the clothes of Krishna. He would worship Krishna from birth, but he didn't associate with Krishna. He was in Mathura. So, we got an upgrade. Yeah.
This one better.
Great, thank you. Beautiful. Oh, okay. I thought it was just my ignorance that I couldn't read the Sanskrit, but it was the light. So when we think about Uddhava and his eligibility to appreciate these matters, we see that he wasn't qualified to give Krishna the reciprocation that Krishna wanted. Krishna wanted someone in Mathura who understood the extent of the gopis' love, so that he could relate to that person about his feelings. And Uddhava was the most intelligent. And we know the pastime when Uddhava came into Vrindavan and Krishna made a spurti, like as if everything was going on in his presence while Krishna was there. The bulls, they were rutting in the fields, the cows, they were lowing nicely, all the gopis were chanting and singing. They were all saying, bring the milk, where is the milk? Oh, don't knock the bucket over. Everything was like a festival of light. It's described all the sacrificial fires were glowing beautifully. Everything was a beautiful atmosphere. And Uddhava was intoxicated with the beauty of Vrindavan. And then he saw Krishna stepping out of a doorway. And immediately he offered his dandavats. But then when he stood up, he realized that everything had changed. And now he was seeing the separation mood. Because this mood of offering obeisances to Krishna is not common in Vrindavan. This is not their mood like that. They're seeing Krishna as their friend, Krishna as their lover. They're seeing Krishna in beautiful, intimate relationships. But Uddhava, with full knowledge of Krishna's Aishwarya feature, then he was acknowledging that in his dandavats. But then as soon as he got up, then that scene was no longer there. He was seeing it totally bereft. And then of course we know the pastime, he goes to see Nanda and Yashoda, and they're weeping so much, he tries to pacify them. He can't pacify them. They think that he's just, doesn't understand Krishna at all, is what Nanda Baba feels, that he's talking about him in such a supreme way. And then he goes and he visits the gopis, and then the beautiful Brahmara Gita chapter takes place. This is another very wonderful chapter that we should regularly touch on, this Brahmara Gita. We don't have a separate book for this Brahmara Gita. It's unfortunate. Brahmara Gita. We don't have a separate book. Maybe somehow we can take Gurudev's lectures on this topic, and one day Vichitri might be merciful and make a... Huh?
It's a very good idea.
She's spoken in front of the deities. She likes the idea. Maybe this time next year we might have it. But that book is filled with such separation moods, so much deeper from this. This is Purvarag. The separation there is Pravas. It's much, much deeper. It's heart-rendering when we appreciate Radharani's full Vipralamba mood in that Brahmara Gita. In this 10th verse, we should understand that Devaki Sutta, the son of Devaki, is actually Yashoda Sutta, the son of Yashoda. Because another name for Yashoda is Devaki. This is told in the Brihat Vishnu Purana. Dvanamni Nanda Brayaya Yashoda Devaki Cha. The wife of Nanda has two names, Yashoda and also Devaki. Govinda Venum Anumata Mayur Nrityam Indra Adipati. The original master of all cows is Govinda. The verbal root Vinda means to give pleasure, protection and nourishment. Therefore, he who is responsible for the welfare, protection and ever-increasing pleasure of all the goes, gopas, gopis, gopa balakas, cowherd boys, govatsa, cows and calves, and gobhumi, pasture grounds, is called Govinda. In this Vrindavan, Yashodananda and Krishna is always roaming about barefoot, glancing over the intoxicated maddened peacocks, and from time to time vibrating mellow tunes on his dear flute. Catching sight of Sri Govinda, who pours forth the core of his heart through the Venu, the peacocks experience great pleasure and start dancing with joy. They think that Krishna's golden pitamba against the effulgence of his bluish body looks like a lightning flash across a new water-filled blue cloud, and that soft sound of the Venu is like muted thunder. Intoxicated with love, they spread their tail feathers and dance with complete abandon. Seeing this, Krishna plays an even more heart-rendering melody on his flute. The peacocks then become even more spirited than before, and being so delighted with the sweet Venu Nad, surrender their feathers to him. Accepting those feathers with great love, Krishna places them on his crown and says, "O peacocks, I will wear your gift of love on my head for the rest of my life." And because Krishna sees the name of his most dearly beloved sweetheart on the feathers, the peacock's gift is especially precious. Krishna affectionately accepts whatever a devotee offers with devotion. Srila Gurudev has also told us, as devotees, that whatever is offered to us with love and affection, we should always accept. Even if it's the wrong color, if you don't like it, if it's not in your style, if it's offered to us with love, then we should accept. Even there's the extreme example of Param Gurudev when he went to visit Vamsi Das Babaji, and he was given a cup of tea, and he accepted it. And the other couple of disciples with him, they were wondering, why has he accepted a cup of tea? And then he told them, well, I'll just leave it here, I won't drink it, but I've accepted it. So you can accept anything that is offered to you with love and affection. We should remember this. Many times on the road, people give me all kinds of strange things sometimes. But if it's actually with affection, then you know, little children come and give you all kinds of gifts and so on. So we should remember that, because sometimes I've seen devotees, oh, I don't want that, don't want that. This is it hurts the heart. Gurudev said this many, many years ago. So see, here he's saying the same thing. On the pages here, you accept everything that is offered with love and affection. You can say?
Is there an easy way to discriminate between what's being given with love and affection or some other motive? Or should you always assume it's with love and affection?
Well, if you're a very pure soul, you'll be assuming that it's with love and affection. But of course, if someone's giving you something in a sort of sense gratificatory way, that they want some reciprocation from you for the gift that you're giving, then that's sort of like a different matter. That's not quite in the same category. But I know that there are times in our lives when we have to remember this point. If you sometimes visit Indian homes, they often, they make so much production about feeding you and so on. And actually you have to reciprocate to some degree. You have to sit down and you have to, submit. And, otherwise, what is the benefit of your carrying a saintly message if you can't reciprocate with the best of their intentions? People offer the best of their, but they're not always the same in agreement with us, but still, we should. There's a beautiful story of one time when Prabhupada was in a house and they had given him onions in the sabji. And the devotee said, "Oh Prabhupada, there's onions in the sabji." Prabhupada said, "No, there's not." And then again they said, "Prabhupada, there's onions in the sabji." And Prabhupada said, "There are no onions in the sabji." So many lessons from this. He was letting the guests know that there shouldn't have been onions in the sabji, for if he came again. But still, out of affection, he was going to take that. It's not going to kill your system if you eat an onion. It's not going to send you to hell for eternal. You were there? Really? Wow, that's wonderful. Oh, maybe you're the one who told me. You're the one who told me.
Somebody else went to Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, there are onions in the subject like a major disaster for
Right.
the whole floor or something. Possibly. And Prabhupada just...
Completely
I
transcendental.
I don't recall that he responded the way you just did. I don't remember him saying that. He just waved like, it doesn't matter, don't pay any attention.
Yeah. So the purpose of saying this is to accept what is offered with devotion. This is not, it's obvious here that Krishna is going to accept that, but I'm just taking this into our own lives. But sometimes these examples do come up. If someone's gone to a great extent to make a huge salad and it's got carrots in it, and you make a huge song and dance, so I'm so pure I couldn't eat this carrot, I'll go to hell or something. That's probably going to be quite... I remember one sannyasi, he's no longer a sannyasi, but he came to the house of a very old devotee, Yamuna actually. And he started immediately, saying different things about the altar decoration and this and that and the other. And she was so offended, with that kind of attitude. Do you understand what I'm saying? like we may have these truths and understand them for ourselves, but then we have to be a little bit balanced in how we present them in the world at large.
Types of vegetables, you couldn't so easily make Vedic cooking, preparations. So Prabhupada said, what shall we do? We can't starve, so we just make compromise. It was practical.
Just eat what?
We cannot starve, so we will make a compromise, like this. Sorry. No, I wasn't there.
One time, Mahesh had invited us all for prasad during Kartik.
I remember.
When,
I was
and
there.
he had prepared, I think maybe in advance, Gurudev had sent word that all the restrictions in our diet, and they made a sabji with eggplant, and Gurudev refused to let him serve it to us.
I know.
I was surprised.
I
And he said,
remember.
absolutely not. You give it to the Babajis, anybody else. Not feeding it to our devotees.
Yeah, so that's like an opposite example. I remember that at Mahesh's house.
Yeah.
He'd prepared eggplant, tomato.
His wife is a disciple of Gurudev,
Yeah,
so they should know better.
yeah,
Actually,
yeah. That was a different.
Things are never black and white.
yeah.
Yeah. But this principle of love is.
Time, place.
There's the other example also of, how we respect our Brahman thread so much in that time when the microphone was wobbling and Prabhupada just took off his Brahman thread and tied it up. He was on stage, the microphone, and he just used his thread. I mean, he wasn't wanting to sort of support that smarta Brahman type of mentality where we practically we lace ourselves into a straitjacket because of the rules and regulations. Actually, just right now, Haladar Prabhu, he's composed a very beautiful book called A Beautiful Way of Life, and it's describing all the different rules and regulations in a proper, beautiful manner. All these rules and regulations are coming from the hearts of the sages out of their compassion for the fallen, conditioned souls to act not on the animal platform. That's why they've all come into existence. It's to create human beings rather than animals. That's the purpose of all the rules and regulations. But other persons with big false egos have tried to use these as an intimidating sort of stick, and it becomes like a very aggressive thing that sometimes people try and enforce these rules rather than actually in a loving mood. So devotees need to learn this balance of how to present, like in the pastime of Prabhupada, with the onions, how to present, these truths in a way that will be able to be digested and will be able to be understood properly, because there is such wonderful reasons why all the different rules and regulations are there. Every single rule has a wonderful gift of taking us more into a sattvic mode, or even a transcendental mode if it's followed carefully. But if we take that same jewel-like regulation and try and enforce it in an abusive way, that's going to have an opposite effect. And of course, in our naivety and youthfulness initially, this was going on so much, but now, gradually, and when this book comes out, it's called A Beautiful Way. What is it? It's called A Beautiful Way? Yeah. And it just describes all of these rules in a very, heartfelt manner, which shows the positivity of all this.
one who's hosting just like that, because I wouldn't be able to, purify those things. I'm not pure enough.
If we all, Dungavidididi is saying that the pure devotee, he can many times rectify and reconcile the situation when he's present. He can actually purify the situation so that there's no offense committed, because he condone, like eating the onions, for example, he can condone like that. Huh? Yes. Yeah. So, in those sort of situations, but then when the pure devotee is not present, as much as possible, we are trying to show the beautiful nature of the way that we follow these regulations and for the purpose. But what is most important for us is that we should be very educated in why we are following the principles, because many times, from the younger devotees in particular, they don't know why you don't eat garlic. For example, they think, before I was a devotee, garlic used to cure my cold and so many things like this, but actually it creates the mode of ignorance. In fact, just for your information, in the Second World War, in the Air Force pilots, they were told not to eat any garlic 78 hours before they flew, because it... Today also, because it dulls the brain. 78 hours before, because your mind has to be totally alert in an extreme situation like that. So they were told. So that's just one example. So if the devotees have this type of fund of knowledge, then they know why. So there's no aggression, is the point that I'm just, making about placing these rules. Because sometimes a temple atmosphere can become very, difficult to live in if there are younger devotees running around enforcing something that they don't even really understand. We've all experienced like this, but it's our duty to try and understand these things fully. And like in this example, I've known this for years actually. I remember in '94, Srila Gurudev told me one time when I was staying in Vrindavan, I was telling him about the different devotees, different things. And he said to me at that time, you should stay with people who are always friendly with you and you have a feeling of affection with. So this mood has to be very much there for our bhajan to flourish. What's that? Ashraya Snigdha? Svajatiya Snigdha Ashraya. We should be seeking this type of association where we are feeling affectionate relationships with those around us. So this conditioned nature of imposing our will on others must be purified. I'm just talking to myself here, but if it makes any effect for everyone else. In Bhagavad Gita 9:26, he himself says, Patram pushpam phalam toyam yome bhaktya prayachati tadaham bhaktya uparatam ashnami prayanatmanaha. I accept with great affection whatever any devotee having immaculate prem lovingly offers me, be it a leaf, a flower, fruits, water, or anything else. So in relationship to this conversation, of course, we have the extreme example of Vidura's wife feeding Krishna banana peels, and Krishna just very happily eating them with great relish because of the affection of Vidura's wife, giving them those, in her ecstasy, throwing the banana away and giving him the peels, and Krishna just very happily smiling from ear to ear, eating these, and then Vidura suddenly arriving and realizing what his wife is doing, not appreciating this ecstatic exchange. But like this is the perfect example of where Krishna will accept anything that is offered with affection. So simultaneously, I'm just saying, in our lives, whatever is offered with that same mood, don't be discriminating. One time, Srila Gurudev, we were there in Radhastami in Mathura. And maybe you remember, Vichitri, how Gurudev would get all these baskets of bangles and baskets of different jewelry and cosmetics for all the ladies, because all the ladies would come on Radhastami. The temple in Mathura would be packed with the local ladies from Mathura. And then he would get one or two ladies to pick up the baskets and start distributing them. And then I was there one year watching this, and then, of course, when you give a lady a green bangle, all of a sudden, she wants the blue bangle. And then this one wanted, and this was going, and Gurudev was sitting there getting so impatient in his seat. He suddenly jumped across the lectern, across the book, and he grabbed the basket out and chastised it, and then just started giving like this, just directly like this, not allowing anyone to have any sort of choice, but very vigorously, So like that, we should just be, again, he's saying the same message, don't discriminate, just accept what is given to us. The peacocks become even more enlivened upon hearing the Venu Nad and seeing Krishna's lotus face, his head decorated with their feathers. They drown in rapture and dance to the sweet rhythm of the Venu in a way that is very soothing and enchanting to Krishna's eyes. The peacocks and Krishna exchange their barbs, thereby inspiring each other to greater ecstasy. Krishna honors the peacock in so many ways. When we go to Varshana, we go up to that Mayur Buko. What's the place called? Morkuti at the top of the steps, if you have the energy to go up the top. And this is the place where Radha and Krishna, they dress themselves as peacocks and they danced as peacocks together. How vigorous. Sometimes we see in the Raslila pastimes, they enact the same, they tie all the feathers together and they shake them like this. It's very beautiful to see. So Krishna was very enlivened by these sort of displays of the peacocks, and also he'd imitate that. The Sakis see this entire scene through their eyes of their loving emotions, as their hearts are being inundated with the sanchari bhavs of dainya, humility, and nirveda, self-disparagement. One gopi declares, "O Saki, such moods are exchanged between like-minded hearts. We have heard from Purnamasi that Sri Krishna is a young, lifelong brahmachari, celibate, and the peacocks are also brahmacharis. That is why they exchange loving glances with each other. Capable people associate with others who are similarly qualified, but we are married women and therefore belong to someone else. So how is it possible for us to get together with Shyama Sundara?" So this sanchari bhav of nirveda, this self-disparagement, this is what the gopis are feeling. They're feeling so unqualified, even in the bodies of women, to actually, even they are the most splendid women in existence. There's many descriptions of the beauty of the gopis, so much they excel the beauties of the heavenly damsels of Vaikuntha or the Apsaras or anyone. Their beauty is just unbelievable, and yet they're disparaging their own beautiful forms and saying that the peacocks have a more blessed, fortunate birth than they. So this is the power of these sanchari bhavs as they come on this lake of the Stai Bhav. Krishna often sits, that's why there are 33 sanchari bhavs. There's so many flavors. Sometimes 3 or 4 sanchari bhavs simultaneously come, creating such a color, such a atmosphere, a difference, a variety of moods. Because these sanchari bhavs, it seems, have the predominance for that moment when they manifest. The main predominating bhav is the madhurya, the shringara ras. But these sanchari bhavs, it appears that they take prominence just momentarily, or transitory it's called, these different waves. So this creates such a dramatic variety and flavor in their pastimes, such a color that takes place. Krishna often sits in Govardhan's valleys, where everyone can get a clear, unobstructed view of him. All the living entities in the valleys, except for the peacocks, stand or sit motionlessly, becoming detached from all material affairs. The speciality of the peacocks, which distinguishes them from the other birds and animals, is that they become uninhibitedly enraptured upon seeing their feathers on Krishna's head and upon hearing the Venu Nad, which they take to be thunder. Instead of being stunned into complete immobility like the other creatures, the peacocks dance to the melody of the flute with full self-abandon. Sri Krishna's cloud-like beauty and the thunder-like sound coming from his Venu make the peacocks' hearts leap. Their bodies in turn start to dance along with their hearts. I'm going to stop in a moment. I'll just keep reading it straight through. Okay? And then I'll stop. On the other hand, all the other living entities become totally motionless, seeing Krishna's Rup Madhuri, sweet beautiful form, and hearing his Venu Madhuri, sweet flute. In order to witness and taste the nectar of Krishna's sweet flute playing and the peacock's unprecedented, beautifully rhythmical movements, all the animals, birds, cowherd boys, cows, calves, deer, and does gather in Govardhan's valleys. Flocks of birds crowd the branches of the trees, while the cowherd boys, praising the flute playing and the dancing, circle close around Krishna and the peacocks. Here, Adri, mountain, refers to Giriraj Govardhan. On seeing Krishna's incomparable beauty and hearing the sound of the Venu, which attracts the minds of everyone in the three worlds, all the birds and animals stop moving, becoming still as statues. The cowherd boys and others forget whatever they are doing and only look at Krishna. Even the calves drinking milk leave their mothers and run towards him, and the peacocks, having gone mad, start dancing with him. I was thinking that these descriptions of Krishna are so reinforcing and are so all purifying for the consciousness to fully embrace this personal aspect of Krishna. And those people who seem to be gifted with so much material intelligence, they're actually obstructed to coming into these pastimes, practically speaking, because they're still grappling with various aspects of the philosophy. They can't even accept the philosophy of Krishna sufficiently to actually have the eligibility. So it's almost like an automatic eligibility that becomes bestowed upon us simply by hearing these pastimes. We become strong, very strong in our personal appreciation of the Lord. And this impersonal, or these impersonal conceptions go far away. And when we couple this, like in the morning time when we're hearing philosophically how Krishna's presence is in everything, and then we are recognizing the beauty of Krishna in his personal form, these two together make a very, strong foundation for us to practice our sadhana bhajan upon. So I'm going to stop here.
It's only 2 pages, then the whole chapter is through.
Yeah, she always does this, girl. Wherever we are, she pushes me on. Okay, we'll read a little more. But they have the arti soon. We give preference to this.
10 minutes.
Okay, we'll finish. Look, Saki, one cowherd maiden says to another, all kinds of animals and birds, upon hearing the vibration of the Venu, become paralyzed in pleasure and lose external consciousness. Seeing Govinda and hearing his Venu Nad, even hard stones and rocks melt and become clearly imprinted with Shyamasundara's most beautiful, tender footprints. But what more can I tell you, Saki? Our hearts are so hard that even after hearing the Venu Nad, nothing changes in them. Alas, fie on us, our lives are cursed. What is the point of such a life? Avaratanya samasta sattvam. Sri Sanatan Goswami Pad has shed light on the meaning of this part of the verse. He says that avarata refers to the abolishing of the modes of passion and ignorance, meaning that only in the absence of passion and ignorance does Vishuddha Sattva, pure spiritual goodness, illuminate the heart. The gopis explain its symptoms elsewhere. Vana latas tarava atmani vishnum vyan jyatya iva pushpa falad adya pranata bhav vitapa madhu dara prema Krista tanava vivarsu sma. Bhagavatam 10:35-9. When Sri Krishna, the master of inconceivable opulences, roams around Vrindavan, playing his Venu, he calls out the names of the cows grazing in the meadows at the foot of Giriraj Govardhan. At that time, all the trees and creepers of the forest blossom with flowers and fruits. Their branches bend low with their weight as if offering obeisances. These trees and creepers, filled to the brim with affection, thus express their love for Krishna. Each and every pore of their bodies blossoms in delight, and their honey flows out as if they were shedding tears of joy. This shows that the natural characteristic of bhakti is to awaken humility and a serving mood in the heart. Bhagavatam tells us that in Vaikuntha, only Vishuddha Sattva, unalloyed spiritual goodness. This is the verse we are reading today, 2.9.10. It's referring to 2.9.10. We're reading, not number 10, but we were reading this same chapter today. Is manifest. There is no mixed goodness, no effect of the three modes, nor any passage of time. Pravartante yatra rajas tamastayo, sattvam cha mishram cha na cha kala vikrama. In this 10th verse, the gopis wonder, O Creator, when will we have the same good fortune as Vrindavan, who always adorns her breast with Krishna's lotus feet? Oh, we are bereft of all auspiciousness. The peacocks and peahens together dance with Krishna. Why can't we, along with our husbands, dance with him upon hearing the sound of his flute? No, we are completely accursed, as our husbands are vehemently opposed to this idea. The trees, creepers, deer and does, even all the birds and animals can go close to Krishna, but not even for an instant do we have the good fortune to be with him and lovingly hold his lotus feet to our breasts. We are so powerless. Only when we die and take birth in another species in Vrindavan will we be able to get Krishna's association. Only then will our lives take on some meaning. Shri Venu Gita ki jai, Srila Gurudev ki jai, Anatakota Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Radha Gopinath Ju ki jai, Satchinandana Gaura Hari ki jai, Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol, Vanchakaputrubhyascha, Kripa Sindhaviccha, Patitanam Bhavan Vaishnavi Namah. Gurudev has always instructed that whenever we finish speaking, we always have to chant Hare Krishna. So tonight we don't have time for any kirtan, so together we'll just say the Maha Mantra 3 times. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Gaura Arati ki jai.